The hall was silent, heavy with fear and judgment. Torches burned along the walls, throwing long shadows on the floor. In the center stood a girl, young, tall, and proud. Her alien eyes glowed with sadness, but her chin remained high. She was accused of betrayal, accused of turning against her people. Yet in her heart she knew the truth. She had not betrayed anyone. She had only refused to join in cruelty. Around her, the crowd gathered. Warriors, elders, and leaders sat above her, staring down from their thrones. Their voices had already decided her fate. She would be punished. She would be broken as an example to the rest. The girl's own people did not defend her. They looked away, afraid to stand with her. Alone, she waited for the strike, the blow that would end her. Whispers filled the air. They called her a coward, a traitor, a disgrace. She heard their words but did not lower her head. If she was to die, she would die standing. Her heart raced, but her spirit did not break. She thought to herself, "If this is my end, I will meet it with strength." Then, something unexpected happened. From the far side of the hall, footsteps echoed. A man stepped forward, not an alien, not one of her people, but a human. His clothes were torn, his face carried scars, his eyes were calm but strong. The hall fell into silence. All looked at him with shock. For a human to enter this place was rare. For a human to step into the circle of judgment was unthinkable. The guards raised their weapons, but he did not stop. He walked straight to the girl and stood in front of her. His body became a shield. His voice was steady when he spoke. "If she must be struck, then strike me first." Gasps rose from the crowd. No one believed what they had heard. A human defending an alien girl. It was madness. It was foolishness. The elders leaned forward, their faces dark with anger. "Why would you protect her?" they demanded. The human did not flinch. His eyes did not waver. "Because she stands alone, because no one else will." He answered. His words were simple, but they carried weight. His tone was calm, yet it cut through the hall like fire. The soldiers laughed. They said humans were weak. They said this man would fall with the first strike. But still, he did not move. Still, he stood tall. His presence alone shook the silence. The girl stared at him, her heart frozen. She could not believe what she saw. She whispered, "Why? Why do this for me?" He did not turn to her. He only said, "Because sometimes one must stand when all others turn away." The elder signaled the guard, "Strike him." The order rang. The guard raised his weapon and with full force swung it down. The human did not move. He took the blow on his shoulder. The impact shook his body, but he did not fall. The hall gasped again. A second blow came. Heavier, sharper. The human gritted his teeth, his body bent, but he stood. The girl's eyes widened. She had never seen such defiance. She had never seen such courage. For her, a stranger was taking the pain meant for her. The whispers changed. Some voices grew uncertain. Some eyes turned with doubt. "Why does he endure?" they murmured. "Why does he not break?" The human only stood taller, his chest rising with every breath. His blood stained the floor, but his eyes burned brighter. The girl felt her heart pound. Something inside her shifted. For the first time since her trial began, she did not feel alone. A stranger, a human, had chosen to share her burden. His presence gave her strength. His sacrifice lit a spark of hope. The elder shouted in anger, "Enough! End this madness!" But the crowd was no longer silent. The crowd was no longer blind. They saw the human. They saw the courage. They saw the truth. The human spoke once more. His voice was low, but it carried to every ear. "If you strike her, you strike me. If you punish her, punish me. But know this, strength is not in numbers. It is not in cruelty. It is in standing, even when standing alone." The hall shook with tension. The girl looked at him, her eyes wet with tears she had refused to show. For the first time, she whispered not in fear, but in awe, "You stood for me." And in that moment, everything changed. The trial was no longer simple. The punishment was no longer certain, for one human had turned the tide. The guards hesitated, their hands gripping their weapons tighter. The human still stood in front of the girl, blood already dripping from the first strike. His body was bruised, but his spirit looked untouched. He did not fall, and that alone made the crowd uneasy. The alien girl could not take her eyes away from him. Never in her life had she seen anyone, especially a human, stand in such defiance. She had heard humans were fragile, weak, and easily broken, but here he was, standing tall like a mountain, refusing to move, refusing to bend. The elder slammed his staff against the stone floor. Strike again. He ordered. The guard obeyed, raising his weapon higher. The second blow came down with brutal force. A crack echoed across the hall. The human's body shuddered. His knees almost touched the ground. Yet he forced himself up again. His face was pale, his jaw clenched, but his eyes shone brighter than before. Gasps ran through the crowd. The whispers changed tone. What once was mockery became doubt. What once was laughter became fear. The girl heard them murmur, "Why does he not fall? Why does he stand still? He is only human." The guard looked uneasy now, sweat running down his brow. He had expected the human to fall quickly, like a weak beast. Instead, the human stood strong, blocking every path to the girl. His chest rose heavily with each breath, his wounds fresh and raw. Yet his presence filled the hall with something no one expected. Courage. The girl finally found her voice, trembling but sharp. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Her words were quiet, but in the silence they sounded loud. He turned his head slightly, just enough for her to see the fire in his eyes. "Because no one else will," he answered. His tone carried no hesitation, no doubt. The elders grew restless. They did not like what they saw. The human was changing the trial, twisting it from a simple punishment into a dangerous spectacle. The crowd was shifting. Their loyalty was not as firm as before. Their eyes betrayed uncertainty. Some even looked ashamed. "In this foolishness," another elder barked, "humans do not belong here. Kill him and be done with it." The guards moved closer, circling him. The girl's heart raced. She thought he would finally step aside. He had already done more than anyone ever would. But he did not move. Instead, he planted his feet more firmly on the ground, spreading his arms wide. His body still shielded her completely. The first guard swung again, aiming for the human's chest. The blow struck with a heavy thud. He staggered, coughed, blood spilling from his lips. Yet he stood upright again, his breath ragged, his eyes burning. The second guard swung. The strike cut across his back. He cried out in pain, but he did not fall. His body wavered like a tree in a storm, but still he stood. The girl's eyes filled with tears. She had not cried when they called her a traitor. She had not cried when they sentenced her. But now, seeing this stranger, this human, take every strike for her, her strength broke. She whispered, "Stop, please stop." But the human only shook his head. "You must not fall," he said softly. "If you fall, they win." His words struck her deeper than the weapons that struck him. For the first time, she felt the meaning of true protection. For the first time, she realized she was worth defending. The crowd grew louder. Their voices no longer united. Some shouted for his death. Others whispered that this was wrong. The elders struck their staffs, trying to silence the noise. But it was too late. The trial was no longer under their control. The human had planted doubt in every heart. One of the elders leaned forward, his voice sharp. "Why do you suffer for her? Human, she is not of your kind. She is not your blood. She is nothing to you." The human raised his head, blood dripping down his face. His voice was weak, but carried across the hall. "She is not nothing. She is someone who stood alone, and no one deserves to face death alone." His words rang out like thunder. Silence fell again, deep and heavy. The guards stepped back. Their hands trembled. Even they began to doubt the order. The elders clenched their jaws, knowing their control was slipping. The girl looked at him with wide eyes, her heart pounding. She felt something new, respect, admiration, and a strange warmth she could not name. The human swayed on his feet, his strength fading. Still, he looked at her and whispered, "Stand tall, do not break." Then he faced the council again, his body broken, but his spirit unshaken. The girl realized something powerful. This man was not fighting for glory, not for reward. He fought simply because it was right, and that truth was stronger than any weapon. The trial that began as her punishment was no longer about her crime. It was now about him, about his defiance, about his refusal to let cruelty win. And in that moment, The girl knew her life was no longer hers alone. It was tied to his sacrifice, to his courage, to his will to protect. The council could no longer deny it. The human had become a symbol. His every breath challenged their power. His every wound screamed louder than their judgment. And as the hall filled with whispers, the elders realized a dangerous truth. This trial was no longer theirs to control. The council had seen enough. The elders did not want the crowd to grow louder. They ordered the guards to seize both the human and the girl. The soldiers moved quickly, binding the human's hands with heavy chains. His body was weak, his wounds bleeding, but he did not resist. He only kept his eyes fixed on the girl, as if telling her silently to stay strong. The girl tried to resist. She kicked and fought against the guards, but they overpowered her. Iron cuffs closed around her wrists. The cold weight of chains dragged her down. She was thrown to the floor beside the human. He gave her a small nod, and in that nod was courage. They were dragged out of the grand hall, down dark stone corridors that smelled of damp earth and rust. The torches flickered as the guards pulled them deeper underground, until finally the two were cast into a prison cell. The heavy door slammed shut, the echo shaking the walls. The girl lay on the ground, breathing hard, her eyes turned to the human, who sat against the wall, his body battered but still upright. "Why?" she whispered, her voice weak. "Why would you take the pain from me? Why risk your life when I am nothing to you?" The human leaned his head back against the cold stone. His breathing was rough, his chest rose and fell with difficulty, but his voice was calm. "You are not nothing. You are someone they wanted to destroy, and that is reason enough." His words made her chest tighten. No one had ever spoken for her like that. Her people had abandoned her, yet this stranger, this human, had stood for her without hesitation. She crawled closer, her chains scraping the ground. "You do not even know me," she said. "I do not need to," he replied. "I know injustice when I see it." Silence fell between them, only the sound of dripping water echoing through the dungeon. The girl studied him, his face scarred, his eyes sharp. Even in pain, he carried himself like a soldier. She realized he had seen many battles, many wars. She wondered how many lives he had risked himself for. Finally, she asked, "Who are you?" He gave a small laugh, bitter but soft. "No one important, just a human who refuses to look away." He shifted, wincing from his wounds. Then his voice lowered. "This trial you faced, it was never meant to be fair." The girl frowned. "What do you mean?" He leaned closer, his tone steady. "They wanted you gone. They wanted you silenced. Not because you betrayed them, but because you refused to obey. You stood against their cruelty, and that makes you dangerous." Her eyes widened. She had always suspected it, but hearing it from him struck her like lightning. "So this was planned," she whispered. "Yes," he said. "They never cared for truth. They cared only for fear. If you were broken in front of the crowd, no one would dare stand against them again." He coughed, blood on his lips, but his voice remained strong. "But their mistake was letting me see it, and their greater mistake was underestimating you." The girl felt a surge of anger. Her chains rattled as her fists clenched. "They cannot keep us here forever," she said. "I will not let them destroy me." The human gave her a tired smile. "Good. Hold on to that fire. It is all they cannot chain." Hours passed in silence. The dungeon was dark, but in that darkness, trust began to grow. The girl found herself watching him, not with suspicion, but with respect. She saw in him a strength she had never known, not the kind that came from weapons or power, but the kind that came from choice, the kind that came from refusing to bend. The human spoke again, his voice low. "I've seen this before in other places on other worlds. Tyrants always believe fear will keep them in control, but fear breaks when one person stands tall. That is why they fear you. That is why they want you gone." The girl listened, her heart heavy but burning. She realized she was not alone anymore. For the first time, she felt someone stood with her. Not behind her, not above her, but beside her. Suddenly, the cell door opened. A guard stepped inside, tossing a plate of stale food on the ground. He sneered at them. "Eat if you wish, it will be your last meal." Then he left, slamming the door. The girl looked at the human, her eyes hard, They want us to break, she said. And we will not, he answered. His voice was firm, his spirit unbroken. That night, while the guards believed them weak, the humans studied the locks. He tested the strength of the chains. Every sound of clinking metal echoed through the chamber, but his determination did not waver. The girl watched, her eyes wide with a mix of hope and fear. "You think we can escape?" she asked. He looked back at her, and for the first time, she saw him smile. Not with arrogance, but with quiet certainty. "I know we can," he said, "because I have escaped worse." The girl felt her heart pound again. She moved closer, her voice a whisper. "If we escape, what then?" The human's gaze hardened. "Then we fight, not just for survival, but for truth." She nodded slowly. Her chains felt lighter in that moment, not because they were weaker, but because hope had entered her heart. And in the cold darkness of the dungeon, two strangers, an alien girl and a human, formed a bond, forged not by blood, but by courage, a bond that would soon challenge the power of an empire. The dungeon was quiet, but the silence was never safe. The guards walked past the cell from time to time, their footsteps heavy, their voices rough. The human sat against the wall, his chains rattling softly as he shifted. His eyes scanned every detail of the cell, the cracks in the stone, the rust on the bars, the weakness in the locks. The girl watched him closely. She had begun to see his mind at work. He was no ordinary fighter. He was a survivor. He studied everything not with panic, but with patience, as though he had been in such places before. Finally, she whispered, "You are planning something." He gave her a tired but steady smile. "I do not plan to die here," he said. His voice was low, almost a growl. He tugged at the chain around his wrists, testing its strength. The iron groaned but held. He looked at her and added, "When the chance comes, we must move fast." The girl's heart pounded. Escape sounded impossible. The dungeon was deep. The guards were many. Yet when she looked at him, she felt that nothing was impossible. His presence alone made her believe. Hours passed. The torches outside the cells flickered weakly. Shadows stretched long across the damp floor. The guards grew lazy. One leaned on his spear while the other dozed. That was when a human moved. He pressed the chain against a sharp edge of stone, grinding it again and again. The metal screeched softly. Sparks flew. His wrists bled. But he did not stop. The girl crawled closer. "You will cut yourself," she whispered. He shook his head. "Pain is nothing. Freedom is everything." His voice was harsh but full of fire. Finally, with a sharp crack, one of his chains snapped. The sound echoed in the cell. Both froze, waiting. The guards did not stir, too lost in their own boredom. The human pulled his other wrist free, his arms trembling from the effort. He looked at the girl, her eyes wide with awe. "Now it is your turn," he said. His fingers worked at her cuffs. His touch was rough, his nails torn, but steady. The lock finally clicked open. The girl gasped as the weight of the chains fell from her wrists. For the first time since the trial began, she felt free. They did not waste time. The human crept to the door, pressing his ear against the iron. He waited for the sound of footsteps to fade, then pulled a small shard of metal from his boot. The girl stared, shocked. "You had that all along." He gave a faint grin. A soldier never walks in a battle empty-handed. With skillful hands, he worked the lock. The door creaked open slowly. The dungeon's air grew colder, carrying with it the scent of freedom. They stepped out, their breath shallow. The hall was dim. Only a few torches lit the path. They moved like shadows. The girl close behind him. Every step echoed. Every sound felt too loud. The human raised his hand, signaling her to stop whenever danger approached. But soon, a guard turned the corner. His eyes widened at the sight of them. Before he could shout, the human lunged forward. His fist struck hard. The guard collapsed without a sound. The girl gasped, but the human only whispered, "Quiet, we cannot stop now." They moved again, faster this time. The fortress was a maze of stone, endless passages and iron doors. Every shadow seemed alive. Every sound threatened to give them away. The girl's legs trembled, but she followed without hesitation. His courage carried her forward. At last, they reached a stairway leading up. The human's breath grew heavier. His body was still broken from the blows. But he did not slow. They climbed step after step until the sound of voices above stopped them cold. Guards, 2 of them, standing watch. Their spears gleamed in the torchlight. The human glanced at the girl. His eyes asked a question without words. She nodded firmly. She would not run. Not now. The guards noticed them too late. The human charged, his body moving with raw strength. He slammed one against the wall, knocking the spear aside. The other raised his weapon, but the girl acted. She grabbed the chain still hanging from her wrist and swung it, striking the guard across the head. He crumpled to the floor. Her chest heaved. She stared at what she had done. The human gave her a quick nod. Good. He whispered, now keep moving. They rushed through the next hall, their feet pounding against the stone. Behind them, shouts began to rise. The alarm had been raised. The fortress came alive with noise. The chase had begun. The girl's lungs burned. Her heart raced. The human's steps slowed. His body weakened from blood loss. Yet he pushed forward, refusing to stop. They turned corner after corner, the walls shaking with the sound of running guards. Finally, they saw it. A door leading outside. Light spilled in from the cracks. The human's eyes lit with hope. Almost there, he said, but as they reached it, more guards appeared, blocking their way. The girl froze. The human stepped in front of her again, his body ready though broken. His voice was steady. We fight. The guard charged. The human raised his fists. The girl gripped the chain in her hand. For the first time, she did not feel like a prisoner. For the first time, she felt like a warrior. The escape was not over. The battle had just begun. The clash in the corridor echoed like thunder. The guards pressed forward with spears and blades, but the human did not back down. He moved with sharp precision, blocking, striking, twisting. His wounds slowed him, yet his will burned brighter than the torches above. The girl fought beside him, swinging her broken chain like a weapon. Each strike was clumsy but filled with desperation. She knocked one guard aside, the chain wrapping around his arm. She pulled hard, sending him crashing to the floor. Her chest heaved, her heart raced, but she did not stop. The guards shouted, their numbers growing. From every corner, more footsteps approached. The human's jaw tightened. He knew they could not hold the hallway for long. He grabbed the girl's wrist and pulled her toward the door. Run, he growled. His voice was ragged, his body heavy, but his determination clear. They burst into the night. The cold air struck their faces. Stars stretched above the fortress walls. The world outside was wide and free, but freedom was still far away, behind them. Horns blared. The hunt had begun. They ran across the courtyard, their steps loud against the stone. Arrows whistled through the air, striking the ground near their feet. The girl stumbled, but the human pulled her up, never letting her fall. They dove behind broken pillars, their breaths quick and shallow. The human pressed his back against the stone, blood dripping from his side. His eyes scanned the open field beyond the walls. Escape meant crossing that distance, but guards already gathered at the gates. The girl turned to him. We cannot win, not against all of them. He looked at her, his face pale, but his gaze steady. Then we do not fight them all. We fight only until we break through. Her throat tightened. She wanted to scream, to tell him to leave her, but the words refused to come. He had stood for her when no one else did, and now she could not abandon him. She clenched her fists, her eyes burning. Then I will fight with you. The human gave her a faint nod. His lips curved into the smallest of smiles. That is all I ask. They moved again, slipping from shadow to shadow. Each step was a gamble, each breath a risk. The fortress felt alive with eyes watching from every tower. Guards poured into the courtyard, shouting, searching. The girl felt fear grip her chest, but beside her, the human walked with calm defiance. His courage poured into her. At last, they reached a narrow gate half hidden by rubble. It was unguarded for now, but the path beyond led into the unknown. The girl hesitated. Her heart pulled in 2 directions. If she ran now, she could escape. She could leave the human behind. He was slowing, his strength fading. His blood stained the ground with every step. The logical choice was to run, to survive. The human leaned against the gate, his breathing heavy. He looked at her with tired eyes. Go, he said softly. Do not waste your life for me." Her chest tightened. She stared at him. Every thought in her mind screamed at her to run. But her heart refused. She shook her head. "No," she whispered. Her voice trembled, but carried a strength she had never felt before. "I will not leave you. Not after what you have done." The human's eyes widened slightly. He searched her face, as if to see if she truly meant it. And in her gaze, he found no doubt. Her loyalty was real, stronger than chains, stronger than fear. The sound of marching boots grew closer. The guards had found them. The human straightened, forcing his body to obey. He stood in front of her once again. But this time, she stepped forward too. Her hand gripped the broken chain tighter. The guards stormed into the courtyard, surrounding them with torches and steel. The elder's voice roared from the balcony above. "You cannot win. Submit, and perhaps your deaths will be merciful." The girl raised her head high. Her voice rang across the courtyard. "No, I will not submit." She stepped closer to the human, her shoulder brushing against his, "and I will not stand alone." The crowd gasped. The sight was powerful. An alien girl, once accused and abandoned, now choosing loyalty to a human over her own people. Murmurs spread through the soldiers. Doubt crept into their hearts. The human's lips curved again, not in joy but in pride. He whispered, "Good. Then together we fight." The soldiers advanced, their weapons gleaming, but the two stood firm, side by side. The girl had made her choice. She would not run. She would not leave him. The night burned with the clash of steel. The fortress walls shook with cries. And though the outcome was uncertain, one truth was clear. She had chosen her loyalty, and it was to him. The courtyard burned with firelight. Torches lit the night sky as soldiers closed in from every side. The girl and the human stood together, their bodies bruised, their strength fading, but their spirits unbroken. The sound of steel clashing echoed like a storm, and I turned to watch. The human stepped forward first, his fists clenched, his body trembling with exhaustion. But his gaze steady, he struck one guard down, then another. His movements were slower now, but each blow carried purpose. He was not fighting to survive alone. He was fighting to shield her. The girl fought at his side, her broken chains swinging like a whip. Sparks flew when it struck metal. Guards stumbled back, shocked by her defiance. She had once been the accused, chained and powerless. Now she stood tall, fearless. Her courage burned brighter with every strike. But their enemies were many. Blades flashed from all sides. Spears pushed forward. The human grunted in pain as another wound opened across his chest. He staggered, nearly falling. The girl caught him, her arms trembling as she held him up. "Stay with me," she whispered. Her voice cracked, but her eyes blazed with fire. From above, the elder council watched, their faces twisted with rage. They had wanted the girl broken, humiliated. They had not expected this, a human standing against them. And worse, an alien girl refusing to bow. The whispers of the soldiers reached even their ears. Doubt was spreading. "Enough," the head elder shouted. His voice thundered across the courtyard. "Seize them alive." The guards hesitated. Their loyalty wavered. The human, bleeding and barely standing, raised his head. His voice was hoarse but unyielding. "You fear us," he said, "not because we are strong, but because we refuse to kneel." The soldiers froze. His words struck deeper than any weapon. The girl stepped forward beside him. Her voice rang clear. "You accuse me of betrayal, but it is you who betrayed our people. You use fear to rule, but fear cannot last forever." The crowd stirred. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Some soldiers lowered their weapons. Uncertain, the elders slammed their staffs, desperate to maintain control. But the tide was turning. Then the head elder rose from his seat. His eyes burned with fury. "Kill them both," he roared. "Show no mercy." The guards obeyed reluctantly. Charging forward, the human stepped ahead once more, shielding the girl with his broken body. The clash was brutal. Steel struck flesh. The human fell to one knee. His blood pooled beneath him. But still he stood. His arms rose to block another blow. His voice, weak but fierce, growled, "You will not touch her." The girl's heart shattered at the sight. She cried out, her voice carrying across the courtyard, "Stop!" For the first time, the soldiers hesitated. Her words rang with something more powerful than fear. It was truth, it was defiance. She dropped the chain at her side and spread her arms. "If you want to kill him, then you must kill me too," she shouted. Her voice echoed off the walls. The courtyard fell silent. The human looked at her, his breath shallow, his eyes filled with pain, but also with pride. He whispered, "You chose." The soldiers looked between one another. Their grip on their weapons loosened. No one wanted to strike. The courage of two had cracked the will of many. The elders screamed in anger. "Do it," they demanded, but the soldiers did not move. Their eyes betrayed doubt. Some stepped back, some lowered their blades. The human pushed himself upright one last time. His face pale, his body shaking. He faced the council directly, his voice ragged but steady. "You sit above us, claiming power, but power is not fear. Power is not cruelty. Power is standing when all others fall." The girl stepped beside him, her voice sharp as steel. "And we will not fall." The crowd erupted. Some shouted in agreement. Some simply stood frozen. The fortress trembled with the sound of voices rising. The elders' control was slipping, their authority crumbling under the weight of defiance. The head elder's face twisted with rage. He raised his staff to signal execution again. But before he could speak, one soldier stepped forward. He dropped his weapon to the ground. "No," he said firmly, "I will not kill them." Another soldier followed, then another, one by one. Blades clattered to the stone. The elders' voices turned shrill, but their power was gone. The people had seen too much. The girl looked around, her heart racing. For the first time, she saw hope. The human's body swayed, his strength nearly gone. He whispered to her, "This is your fight now." His hand brushed against hers, warm despite the blood. She shook her head fiercely. "No, it is our fight." And in that moment, under the firelit sky, the trial was broken. The punishment had become rebellion. The accused and the human had turned the council's judgment into their own weapon. The final confrontation was no longer about survival. It was about freedom. The night ended not with her execution, but with the fall of fear and the rise of courage. The courtyard was alive with voices, soldiers lowering weapons, whispers spreading like wildfire. The elders shouted above the chaos, but their words no longer carried weight. The people had seen something greater than fear. They had seen a human bleed for someone not his own, and an accused girl refused to bow. The human swayed on his feet. His body was broken, his clothes soaked in blood. Every breath was a struggle. Yet he did not step back. He planted his feet firmly, standing like a pillar of defiance. His voice was weak but steady. "If her life must be taken, then take mine instead." The crowd gasped. The girl's heart pounded in her chest. She stepped closer, her hand catching his arm. "No," she whispered fiercely. "You will not give your life for me. We will face this together." But he only gave her a tired smile. The head elder raised his staff, his voice sharp with fury. "Kill them both, in this rebellion." His command echoed, but the soldiers hesitated. Their loyalty was no longer certain. Their eyes shifted between the elders and the two figures standing in the courtyard. The human raised his head, his voice cut through the night like a blade. "Look at them," he shouted to the soldiers. "Look at the ones who call themselves leaders. They sit above you, but they do not bleed. They do not suffer. They rule by fear, but fear ends the moment you refuse to obey." The silence that followed was heavy. The girl felt the weight of his words echo through her chest. She turned to the soldiers too, her voice strong. "You call me a traitor, but the real betrayal is here. It is in those who use your fear to keep you chained. It is in those who want us dead because we dare to stand." The soldiers shifted uneasily. Some lowered their spears completely. Others turned their eyes away from the council. The elders slammed their staffs on the stone floor, desperate to hold their power, but the cracks in their rule were spreading. The human's legs buckled. He fell to one knee. His strength was nearly gone. The girl bent down, holding him up. Her hands shook as she whispered, "Please, stay with me." His eyes, dim but still burning, met hers, "Do not fear," he said softly. "Even if I fall, you must stand." Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded. Her grip on him tightened. Her voice rang out again, louder than before. "If he falls, then I will rise. If he dies, then I will carry his fight. We will not bow. Not now. Not ever." The courtyard erupted. The soldiers' hearts turned. One by one, they dropped their weapons, refusing to obey. The sound of steel clattering against stone drowned the elders' furious cries. The people cheered, their voices filling the night with a roar of freedom. The human lifted his head once more, his body trembling, his breath shallow. He whispered words only she could hear. "You are not alone anymore." Then, gathering the last of his strength, he forced himself to his feet. His figure stood tall against the firelit sky, broken yet unyielding. He faced the elders, his voice carrying across the courtyard one last time. "Strike me if you wish, but know this, you cannot kill what I have shown them. You cannot kill courage, you cannot kill loyalty, you cannot kill hope." The elders faltered, their power slipped through their fingers like sand. They saw it in the faces of their soldiers, in the cheers of the crowd. The fear they had built for years crumbled in a single night. The girl stood beside the human, her head high, her chains broken at her feet. She felt the world shift around her for the first time. She believed freedom was possible. And it began with him, with one human who chose to stand when no one else would. The council, powerless now, retreated into silence, their voices drowned by the rising roar of the people. The human swayed again, his body ready to collapse. The girl caught him, holding him against her. Her voice was fierce and soft all at once. "You are not alone. You never will be." The human gave her one last smile, a smile filled with pain, but also peace. His eyes closed briefly, but his voice whispered, "Then we have already won." The night ended not with death, but with defiance, not with chains, but with freedom. The girl had found her strength, the soldiers had found their courage, and the people had found their voice. And at the heart of it all stood a broken human, who proved that true strength was not in weapons, nor in fear, but in the simple act of standing for another.